everybody. I hope you're having a good morning so far and an even better week. And I know some of you may be stuck at work, and that's fine. Just turn on the podcast and enjoy, have a little bit of a distraction, and then you can get back to work. Just take a little break, right? Everybody needs a little break sometimes. Okay, so we're going to start out with our daily promise. This daily promise is, but God hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty. 1 Corinthians 1:27. Reflection. It is simply breathtaking to contemplate the remarkable grace of God. Amazingly, he chose men of all trades, men of low stature, men from all walks of life. He chose you. He desired those dead in their sins to be resurrected and recreated to declare his infinite glory. What a privilege, what an incredible honor to preach the good news to a dark world. May we rejoice greatly and give praise to his glorious name. All right, that's a good one. I like that one. Okay, so the first thing that I want to talk about, um, so a lot of people in Hollywood, they don't typically speak out about politics and things like that, especially if they have what the left would consider the wrong opinions. But there are those few that will voice how they feel and they don't care what happens to them. And one such celebrity is Rob Schneider. Um, if you don't know who that is, he was in Deuce Bigelow. Um, I can't think of anything, everything that he was in, but he probably back in the 90s, he was real popular. So, um, that's not it. Here it is. This is from the Daily Beast, and it says that he has become Hollywood's loudest and wackiest anti-vaxxer. Now, I don't know how this one is going to, um, I don't know if how that's going to depict him. I tried to find um, the Fox News article that I had read, but I couldn't find it. So we'll use this one too. First, I want to see what the Daily Beast has to say. The Celebrity Anti Vaxxer Brigade has a new member. Rob Schneider of Deuce Bigelow, Mel Gigolo, and the Hot Chick fame has taken to Twitter to air his grievances with the hotly debated California immunization bill. Since his first tweet in April, a retweet of an article shared by vocal anti vaccine activist Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he has posted 464 times. Recently, he's been sharing so many as 10 tweets a day, scolding California state legislators in all caps and sharing famous quotes about political tyranny. The California bill in question, SB 276, would make it more difficult to obtain medical exemptions to vaccines without approval from a public health officer. As the New York Times reports, California, along with Maine, Mississippi, and West Virginia, is one of 4 states that prohibits parents from choosing not to vaccinate their children for personal reasons. Doctors are legally permitted to provide exemptions if there is a medical reason, but if SB 276 passes, they will no longer retain that right. In a testament to his passionate opposition to SB 276, Schneider challenged Democratic California State Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez, who co authored a 2015 bill eliminating personal beliefs vaccine exemptions, to a debate. On Thursday, he wrote on Twitter, Dear Lorena S. Gonzalez, respectfully, either accept my offer to debate you on the merits of SB 276 or refuse and kill this awful piece of government overreach and admit that the people have spoken and want to keep medical decisions made by parents, not faceless bureaucrats. Based on the comedian's liberal use of caps lock, I can't say I blame Gonzalez for not taking him up on his offer. As it turns out, Schneider and Gonzalez have a years long history of feuding. In response to Schneider's pushback against her 2015 bill, Gonzalez tweeted a photo of herself on the phone with the caption, I'm calling back Rob Schneider to discuss the facts around measles immunizations and our CA ledge bill. This isn't even the first time he has challenged her to a debate. As highlighted in a 2017 John Oliver segment, she once responded to the actor's foolish request on Facebook, writing, "Let's be honest, that is 20 minutes of my life I'll never get back arguing that vaccines don't cause autism with Deuce Bigelow, Mel Gigolo." Lorena Gonzalez's family seems to at least have a sense of humor about the drama. With a note of humorous disbelief, her daughter tweeted last week, "I hope whoever marries me is okay marrying into a blood feud against Rob Schneider." The barrage of angry anti vaccine tweets is not out of character for Schneider, who has a laundry list of other controversial moments from throughout his career, including but not limited to repeatedly wearing an unfortunate pattern newsboy cap. Though there are prominent anti vaxxers on both sides of the aisle, Schneider has discussed his switch from Democrat to conservative independent at length. In an interview with Larry King in 2017, Schneider said, "There is a push and a constriction on freedom that is coming from the left now." He profoundly stated that America has some imperfections, citing inequity, poverty, and race, to which King bluntly replied, "All of those are things liberal stands up for." The segment then devolved, predictably, into an anti vaccine diatribe. Of all Schneider's characters, from the Reichmeister on Saturday Night Live to his numerous racist portrayals of guys with accents who are also friends with Adam Sandler, paranoid anti vaxxer is undeniably his least funny role to date. I like how they throw in there about his racist portrayal of guys, like all celebrities haven't at one point portrayed somebody of another race and done blackface to do it. You know, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, they've all done it. And they weren't being racist, they weren't being demeaning, but that's neither here nor there because that's not what this was about. Um, and just because somebody is against this particular vaccine does not mean that they are full on anti vaxxers. All my children have been vaccinated with all the vaccines that you get growing up: measles, mumps, rubella, all that. Every one you get. All my kids have had those. So I'm not against getting kids or people vaccinated. What I'm against is getting vaccinated with something that was created in 9 months when it takes typically at the least years. So step one, research, obviously, and then human clinical trials, which are conducted in 3 phases. Phase one, potential vaccines are given in small doses to healthy human volunteers. Okay. And then while phase one trials usually take at least a year, experts predict they will take approximately 3 months for COVID 19 vaccine candidates. So, why is that? They usually take at least a year, but for COVID vaccine, only 3 months? That's a bit odd. Phase two, if a vaccine candidate clears phase one successfully, it can be tested on larger numbers of people. During phase two trials, an established dosage is given to subjects to determine how reproducible and consistent the immune response is. Okay. Scientists conduct several phase two studies involving a few hundred patients per trial. Phase two trials for COVID vaccines are expected to take 8 months. For other vaccines, phase two studies usually take 2 to 3 years. So now, typical vaccines, we're already up to 4 years. And with COVID, we're up to just under a year for the phases. 2 phases. Typically 4 years at this point, right under a year for COVID. So phase three, it's then tested on a much larger scale, and it can involve tens of thousands of people and screen for rare side effects. And then they determine whether a vaccine actually provides protection against a disease. To speed up the process, COVID 19 vaccine developers may combine phase two and phase three trials. After phase three, the vaccine is submitted for approval and then used clinically. Okay, but it doesn't give me a time on how long that usually takes. But we know that they combine phase two and three for the COVID vaccine. So we're still right at under a year when you would probably be maybe closer to 5 for other vaccines. After a vaccine is on the market and in clinics, prescribers monitor its use for potential adverse reactions that are reported to the manufacturer to ensure its continued safety. Okay, so at the very least, we're talking 5 years typically to create a vaccine. And we had one in 9 months. That's crazy. That's why people don't want to take it. It's not because they don't believe in vaccines. They just know that something that was created in 9 months compared to every other vaccine created taking at the very least 5 years, that's very odd. And people don't trust that because you know what? They would prefer to live a normal life and not have complications from a vaccine that's not been thoroughly tested. That's all I'm saying. Um, so then they have regulatory hurdles and then manufacturing and distribution, which I don't know how long that typically takes. So, it is what it is. But you have to ask yourself, why is it when it takes a certain amount of time for other things, why is it that they have ramped up the speed? And not only that, but preclinical testing, before it's tested on humans, they investigate it in a lab, and that typically means they're doing animal testing. But the regulators allowed researchers to skip that step so we could fast track the vaccine. So it wasn't even studied on animals before they started um, doing trials on people. Now, I have heard that they did do animal testing at the same time they were doing human testing. So it's not like they did the animals and then the humans. They were doing both at the same time. And without a doubt, this one doctor said that all the animals died with these vaccines that they were doing, they're testing with. So I don't really know how true that is. I don't have any data to back that one up, but I just think it's odd that they how quickly it was done. And the fact that it was done in 9 months, to me, it backs up my theory of what actually happened because we know that the US was funding gain of function research, and CCP was behind it in the Wuhan lab. And I feel, in my opinion, with no proof, I don't know this for sure, but I believe that they were doing this research to create a biochemical weapon that they were going to end up releasing. However, I do think that it was accidentally released. I don't think that it was done on purpose yet. I think they were going to do that later on, and then it was leaked accidentally, and that's why you see the chaos that you see, because so many people are trying to cover up the fact that this was going to be an intended thing on the population, but it just happened way too soon. They weren't ready for it, and now they're trying to, cover all their steps and, do some workarounds. That's what I think happened. I wish I could prove that, but I wouldn't put it past them. So, I think had it not accidentally been released, that we would have seen this happen maybe in another year or two down the line, maybe 3 years down the line. It would have happened no matter what. It just accidentally got released. And thank goodness that it did because who knows how much stronger this could have been if they had continued researching and building it up and making it stronger. So it's a good thing it got accidentally released. Um, so speaking about celebs, um, let's see what page 6 had to say about Rob Schneider real quick. Um, so Rob Schneider went on a Twitter rant slamming coronavirus vaccines and called the shots experimental gene therapy. Just say no and keep saying no. He tweeted, over half of the US population is continuing to say no to this unapproved experimental gene therapy. Contrary to the actor's claim, the number of Americans who have gotten the COVID-19 vaccine has been steadily increasing. The Mayo Clinic said that 55.6% of the population had received at least one dose as of Saturday, while 48.1% were fully vaccinated. Schneider ended his tweet by quoting the slogan historically used by women defending their bodily autonomy and abortion rights, writing, "My body, my choice." Yeah, I say the same thing because in this case, it actually is my body, my choice. Twitter flagged the claims in the comedian's tweet as misleading and added a link to a page on why health officials consider COVID 19 vaccines safe for most people. That did not deter Schneider, however, as he continued to tweet about the importance of bodily autonomy. We should never abandon our liberal principles and international stance on body autonomy, free informed choice and human rights, and support unprecedented coercion of professional health workers, patients, and people to have experimental treatments with limited safety data. The hot chick star even went so far as to claim the COVID-19 vaccines were part of a political conspiracy. Our government has told us they plan on going to our front door with this, he wrote, referencing President Biden's push to knock on Americans' doors to get everyone vaccinated. They have lied, had a 2 year fear campaign and lockdown, destroyed middle class household incomes, bankrupted untold thousands of businesses, and are now putting children's lives at risk, Schneider further alleged. Many critics on Twitter dragged the Saturday Night Live alum for spreading misinformation about the vaccines. It's sad to see you destroying your reputation and career over this, one person tweeted. 4 million dead around the world, Rob. Where's your PhD in infectious diseases? Another wrote. Others, however, jumped to Schneider's defense and agreed with this stance. I'm not a politician. I'm a military guy, husband, father. What's happening in DC is atrocious. I didn't fight for this, one Twitter user commented. This isn't the first time Schneider has spoken out against COVID 19 protocol. In February, the grown up star compared social distancing practices at a California school to child abuse. We are witnessing a new kind of child abuse bought and paid for with your tax dollars. The collapse of public schools who follow this example will surely follow. History will not look back at this kindly. The CDC recommends that everyone aged 12 years and older should get a COVID 19 vaccination as soon as possible in order to help prevent the spread of the deadly disease. And why? Because kids are not typically affected. Even the CDC statistics show that kids, and even really the main people, are people with any immune problems, things like that, or people who are over a certain age with medical issues. So it's not affecting children. So don't get your kids vaccinated. That's crazy. But like I said, he's not the only. Um, oh, I just deleted that. He's not the only one who has been speaking out against the vaccines. And I had a whole article pulled up about, well, we'll just use the Rolling Stone article. Other celebrities who have spoken out. So Jessica Biel is many things: actor, mom, wife to Justin Timberlake, consummate ab shower, purveyor of the theory that being hotter than Scarlett Johansson and Natalie Portman has ruined her career. This week, however, the world became aware of another credential on Biel's resume: anti-vaccine activist. So, in an Instagram post, prominent anti vaccine activist Robert F. Kennedy Jr. revealed that he had met with Bill at the California State Assembly to lobby against SB 276. Okay, so we know what that is. We already read. Bill denied being opposed to vaccination, writing in an Instagram post, "I am not against vaccinations. I support children getting vaccinated, and I also support families having the right to make educated medical decisions for their children alongside their physicians." But in a post on Jezebel, a legislative staffer in the California state capitol, who allegedly was present at the meeting between Bill and Kennedy, said that Bill had said she did not adhere to a regular vaccine schedule for her child due to her belief that vaccination was linked to a friend's child illness. and that she had admitted to trying to find a doctor who would agree to delaying vaccines for her child. This practice, doctor shopping, is something that SB 276 is in large part attempting to curb. Um, so I get what she's saying. She'll vaccinate her kids, but she wants them spaced out. She doesn't want them getting so many vaccines all at one time. And I think that they would be better off spacing vaccines out. Why do you have to give them 6 vaccines all at one time? That's a lot of stuff being put into a child's body all at once. So I get why she would want to space it out. I do. So she said, she put on Instagram, this week I went to Sacramento to talk to legislators in California about a proposed bill. I am not against vaccinations. I support children getting vaccinated, and I also support families having the right to make educated medical decisions for their children alongside their physicians. My concern with SB 276 is solely regarding medical exemptions. My dearest friends have a child with a medical condition that warrants an exemption from vaccinations, and should this bill pass, it would greatly affect their family's ability to care for their child in this state. That's why I spoke to legislators and argued against this bill. Not because I don't believe in vaccinations, but because I believe in giving doctors and families they treat the ability to decide what's best for their patients and the ability to provide that treatment. I encourage everyone to read more on this issue and to learn about the intricacies of SB 276. Thank you to everyone who met with me this week to engage in this important discussion. So, um, there's nothing wrong with what she's saying. Then there's also Kristen Cavallari, who was on, I think, The Hills or something like that, reality show. So she appeared on Fox News and said that she had not vaccinated her son Camden. Listen, to each their own. I understand both sides of it. I've read too many books about autism, and there's some scary statistics out there. It's our personal choice. Alicia Silverstone, in her book, The Kind Mama, A Simple Guide to Supercharged Fertility, a Radiant Pregnancy, a Sweeter Birth, and a Healthier, More Beautiful Beginning. That's ridiculous. From Clueless, right? She said there has not been a conclusive study of the negative effects of such a rigorous one size fits all shoot 'em up schedule. I agree. Um, The CDC would disagree, saying numerous peer reviewed studies have pointed to the efficacy and relative safety of vaccines. So she said there is increasing anecdotal evidence from doctors who have gotten distressed phone calls from parents claiming their child was never the same after receiving a vaccine. And I personally have friends whose babies were drastically affected in this way. You have Jenny McCarthy. She said her son was diagnosed with autism when he was 2.5 and has been a vocal advocate for her belief that his diagnosis is attributable to the MMR vaccine. Like many others, she has disputed the label anti vaccine, telling PBS Frontline, we're not an anti vaccine movement, we're pro safe vaccine schedule. So a lot of the people are saying it's too much at one time. That's why they keep saying vaccine schedules. We need to schedule them more appropriately instead of doing it all at one time. Jim Carrey, he came out against mandatory vaccination, writing in the Huffington Post in 2009. In this growing crisis, we cannot afford to blindly trumpet the agenda of the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, or vaccine makers. Now more than ever, we must resist the urge to close this book before it's been written. He also blasted Governor Jerry Brown, calling him a fascist in 2015 for signing a law mandating vaccines for all school age children, regardless of their parents' religious beliefs. Bill Maher, um, he unsurprisingly similarly skeptical about mandatory vaccination. He tweeted in opposition to the swine flu shot at the peak of the epidemic in 2009, has featured prominent vaccine critic RFK Jr. on his show, and railed against mandated vaccination in an interview with former Senator Bill First, saying, why would you let the government be the ones to stick a disease into your arm? I would never get a swine flu vaccine or any vaccine. I don't trust the government, especially with my health. And then in an interview, he clarified his stance on vaccines. He said, I'm not a germ theory denier. I believe vaccinations can work. Polio is a good example. Do I think in certain situations that inoculating third world children against malaria or diphtheria or whatever is right? Of course. In a situation like that, the benefits outweigh cost. But to me, living in Los Angeles, to get a flu shot, no. Um, Lisa Bonet, who I don't know who that is. Oh, from the Cosby Show. Okay, she said that vaccines could potentially introduce alien microorganisms into our children's blood with such terrifying and completely unconfirmed potential long-term effects as cancer, leukemia, multiple sclerosis, sudden infant death syndrome. Tony Braxton, who's saying break my heart. She said, maybe it's just a coincidence that after my son's first MMR vaccine, I began to notice changes in him. Her book also claimed that his autism was God's punishment for her having previously gotten an abortion. Well, that's sad. Selma Blair from Cruel Intentions, she lobbied against SB 277, which was the California bill to remove personal belief exemptions. She said, parental choices are right. Most vaccinate. Let us choose. Jenna Elfman. There's a lot. Um, Juliette Lewis, Danny Masterson, Charlie Sheen, Mayim Bialik, I don't know, from Big Bang Theory, Blossom, Robert De Niro, Kat Von D, Kevin Gates, Donald Trump, obviously. So, in the 2010s, Donald Trump said that, he was saying that vaccines are linked to autism. He said, healthy young child goes to doctor, gets pumped with massive shot of many vaccines, doesn't feel good, and changes. Autism. Many such cases. Um, he said, they have to get the shots. The vaccinations are so important. This is really going around now. They have to get their shots. And this was in, um, I guess recently with the measles outbreak. Okay, so there was a measles outbreak last spring, and he appeared to have bat dread. Well, it's a little bit different when there's an actual measles outbreak because measles affects children more so than it would adults, I believe. I have to, don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it affects children more than adults, which is why you would get a measles vaccine. But he's talking about one vaccine, measles, not 5 at one time. I remember when my oldest went and got her vaccinations, and she slept all the rest of the day. She ran a much higher fever than they typically run after getting vaccinated, and she didn't feel good even into the next day. And she said that her leg hurt where she had been given the shots. And there was a huge knot like where she had gotten the shots. Now that only happened the one time, and clearly she's fine. She doesn't have any health issues or autism or anything like that. But it was still a different reaction than previous times that I'd gotten vaccinated, and it also never happened to any of my other kids. So I don't really know what that was about, honestly, but who knows? I just think if we start having more high profile people speaking out about it and trying to fight for it. I mean, Rob Schneider has 940,000 followers on Twitter, and typically people who, look up to certain celebrities or like them, idolize them, whatever you want to call it, they will typically follow their stance. They want to be like them, so they kind of mimic themselves after that celebrity. And this is where you're going to start seeing people, if they hear them say it so often, maybe they're going to start waking up and being like, yeah, maybe I should check this out myself. So I think it really helps having these high profile people on our side and saying that it's our choice. We shouldn't have to get vaccinated if we don't want to. That's a big deal. Um, Well, in Texas, there's a huge story that Governor Abbott says that he's going to arrest the Democrats that fled from the state. So, this is from Newsweek, and the Democrats fled, and he said when they return to the state, they will be arrested. So, let's read. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has said that Democratic lawmakers who have left the state can and will be arrested upon their return as he pushes ahead with changes in voting laws. Abbott, a Republican, gave an interview to KVUE on Monday about the Democrats' decision to leave the state and whether the special session of the Texas legislature the governor called can go ahead. The Democratic legislators flew out of Texas to Washington, D.C. on Monday in order to deny the legislature the two-thirds quorum needed in order to conduct business and to pass legislation. KVUE asked Abbott if the Democratic walkout meant the voting bills, Senate Bill 1 and House Bill 3, could not be passed, and if he could do anything as governor to compel the lawmakers to return to the state. Abbott said there still remains plenty of time to pass, not just the bills you mentioned, but there's a lot of other bills on there. He highlighted some of the measures other than voting reforms. He then addressed the issue of the quorum. Answering your second question, yes, there is something the governor can do. First of all, I'll tell you what the House of Representatives can do. What the Speaker can do is issue a call to have these members arrested. In addition to that, however, I can and I will continue to call a special session after special session after special session, all the way up until election next year. And so, if these people want to be hanging out wherever they're hanging out on this taxpayer paid junket, they're going to have to be prepared to do it for well over a year, the governor said. As soon as they come back in the state of Texas, they will be arrested. They will be cabined inside the Texas Capitol until they get their job done. Everybody who has a job must show up to do that job, just like your viewers watching right now. State representatives have that same responsibility. Over the weekend, Republicans in the state legislature worked rapidly to advance the two voting bills. Those bills would add new ID requirements for mail in ballots and ban 24-hour polling locations, drive through voting, and ballot drop boxes, among other measures. Critics say these changes will make it harder for people to vote and disproportionately affect people of color. Abbott has repeatedly defended the new measures, telling KVUE, anyone who suggests this deprives anybody of the right to vote is just simply flat out wrong. Under Texas law, absent lawmakers can face arrest and be compelled to attend the legislature. In 2003, Democrats in the legislature fled the state of Oklahoma and successfully prevented the passage of a redistricting plan. Texas Democrats staged a walkout in May and successfully stopped an earlier version of the voting legislation from passing. However, the lawmakers may have to remain outside of Texas for weeks or longer in order to prevent the current proposals from passing if Abbott continues calling special sessions as he suggested. The Texas Democratic Party issued a statement on the walkout on Monday saying, after Democrats historically blocked Republicans' anti voter efforts in the spring legislative session, Abbott called an irregular extra legislative session in order to resurrect the anti-voter legislation, Republicans' main hope of holding on to power in the 2022 election. In response to Republicans' escalation of their attacks on voters, Democrats continued to hold the line, the statement said. You know, it's funny how they say, oh, the Republicans want to hold on to power. But who honestly has the most power of anyone? The left. They control the White House. They control the education system, big tech, Hollywood. They control most everything. So, really, like wanting these requirements and not wanting these requirements, if you're fighting so hard against these, you make it look like you're fighting so hard against it because you know in 2022 you are going to lose seats because you've taken one step too far over the line, and now people don't want to vote you back in, and they're going to vote Republicans in 2022, and you're about to lose some power. That would be the only reason you're fighting against it. So I hope that Governor Abbott sticks to his guns and arrests them and forces them to come back and do their job. I really do. And speaking of people who don't do their job, they don't just do their job, they have to do other stuff and they look stupid, are sports activists. Now we know we already had the story of Gwen Berry and her disrespect to the flag and the anthem. So this is from ABC News. It says, here's what could happen to activist Olympians. Now, I didn't read this all the way through. I saw this yesterday and I read some of it and I got busy and couldn't finish reading it. So I don't know exactly what the end result of this article is, but let's just find out together. Since the start of the Olympic Games in 1896, athletes have used the international stage to shine a light on social justice issues. One of the most iconic protests came from Tommy Smith and John Carlos, the gold and bronze medalists in the 200-meter dash in 1968, who each put on a glove and raised a fist in protest of the treatment of black people in the United States. Since then, according to sports historians like Jules Boykoff and Louis Moore, the International Olympic Committee has cracked down on protest. The rule, Article 50, has been reaffirmed by the IOC ahead of the Tokyo Games and states that no kind of demonstration or political, religious, or racial propaganda is permitted in any Olympic sites, venues, or other arenas. In June, a group of high profile U.S. athletes, including Carlos, sent a letter to the IOC and the International Paralympic Committee asking to eliminate that part of the article, which since been updated to allow for athletes to express their views in specific places and mediums, like when talking to the media, at team meetings, or on the field of play prior to competition. This amendment goes on to say that protests can be targeted directly or indirectly against people, countries, organizations, and or their dignity, and not disruptive. Their examples of disruptive protests include expressions during another athlete's or team's national anthem or introduction. The IOC said the rule is intended to preserve the neutrality of sports and the neutrality of the Olympics. Um, the Olympics' newest sports poised to break barriers for women, is that part of that? Focus at the Olympic Games must remain on athletes' performances, sports, and the international unity and harmony that the Olympic movement seeks to advance. The IOC's Athletes Commission states on the Article 50 guidelines. It is a fundamental principle that sport is neutral and must be separate from political, religious, or any other type of interference. But Moore, a historian from Grand Valley State University, said that for marginalized groups, it's impossible to separate the Olympics from politics, which I don't get that at all. I would need them to explain that to me. The Olympics in itself is political, Moore said. The United States has participated in the Jim Crow Society. It's these athletes that are going to the Olympics with USA across their chest, and they're coming back as second class citizens. Oh, bullcrap. Stop boo hooing. Let's say they don't speak up, but they're still going with an intent of proving something. Athletes who protest may face consequences or disciplinary actions, although the IOC did not respond to ABC News' request for comment on what specific punishments may look like. They should be punished because that's right. When you're going and playing a sport and representing a country, especially in the Olympics or your state, whatever it may be, it's not your business while you're in that uniform competing in that sport to protest or say something, disrespect the flag of your country. That is not the time to do it. You are not that you're being paid to do a job. Just like when you work any other job, there are rules. You're not allowed to cuss at the customers. You're not allowed to consume alcohol. You're not allowed to smoke in the building. So if you were to do those things, you would be fired. The Olympics is the same way. It's a job. It may be something you thoroughly enjoy and you love doing it, and it doesn't feel like a job, but it's a job because that's what you do for a living. Okay, one of the earliest protests occurred in 1906 when Peter O'Connor, an Irish track athlete, traveled to Greece with his Irish flag in hand. However, a technicality in the rules meant that since Ireland didn't have an Olympic Council, Irish athletes would be competing with the British. When he placed second in the long jump, Great Britain's Union Jack was set to wave over O'Connor on the podium. But instead, O'Connor scaled a flagpole and replaced the Union Jack with Ireland's Erin Go Bragh flag. I don't know if that's how you say that. Down below, his fellow Irish athletes protected him from security. In 1968, Smith and Carlos were suspended and expelled from the Games for their protest. The two also didn't wear shoes on the podium and instead wore black socks to represent poverty in the black community. Except that I do know from all the black people that I know in my life, they have much more expensive shoes than even I have. They love their shoes, Nike most of all. So don't tell me that they don't have shoes, please. Don't tell me that every black person in the black community is poor, because they're not. Some are, some aren't. Some are super wealthy, some are just okay, and some are poor. That's with everybody. Smith, Carlos, and Peter Norman, the Australian second place winner of the 200-meter race, who supported their movement, all wore the badges of the Olympic Project for Human Rights. The group, established by sociologist Harry Edwards, was created to spotlight inequality and injustice. Smith and Carlos were blacklisted, and the backlash took a toll on their personal and professional relationships, according to Boykoff. They paid a real price for their athlete activism. Both found it difficult to find work when they came back to the United States. Another track athlete, Wyomia, Wyomia Tyus, also was a part of the activist organization and protested at the Mexico City Games. Instead of wearing her proper team uniform, she sported black shorts in the Olympic 100-meter final. It was her way of silently protesting racial injustice in the U.S. Also, at the 1986 Games, Vera Kozlovska, a Czechoslovakian gymnast, turned her head away for the Soviet flag during the medal ceremony in protest of the Soviet Union's invasion of Czechoslovakia shortly before the Games. Kozlovska fled the country as an outspoken critic of the Soviet regime. In 2012, Damien Hooper, an indigenous boxer from Australia, wore a t-shirt with the Aboriginal flag into the ring for a match at the London Games. The IOC slammed the Australian Olympic Committee for his actions, since the rules prohibits the use of flags that are not official country flags, and he later apologized. In 2016, Ethiopian runner Phasia Lilesa crossed his arms above his head as he crossed the finish line, a gesture used by the Oromo people, who have suffered mass killings at the hands of Ethiopian police, according to Human Rights Watch. As the Olympics, scheduled from July 23rd to August 8th, near, many have their eye on what protests will look like following a recent racial reckoning in the U.S. In a movement widely credited to beginning anew with former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick, athletes across several U.S. professional sports leagues have protested against social injustice and systemic racism. So we're not going to read all that because we know all about that. Um, Several Republicans, including Rep. Dan Crenshaw from Texas, have spoken out against Barry and other athletes who may protest at the Olympics. We don't need any more activist athletes. She should be removed from the team, talking about Gwen Berry. The entire point of the Olympic team is to represent the United States of America. Moore said that black athletes have long been criticized and suppressed when it came to expressing their beliefs, and that he believes efforts to silence Berry just show how powerful her message is. She is officially the voice of this moment. That's the most powerful part about that is that a black woman is holding court, and she has the world's attention. Yeah, she has the world's attention, and people are criticizing her and wanting her kicked off the team. You know how they say negative attention is still attention, bad publicity is still publicity? No, it doesn't work like that. However, historians and sports analysts say that sports can be a tool for dialogue, and that athletes have been great forces in calling attention to issues of injustice and inequality. A lot of sports fans consider themselves apolitical, and so they have to confront certain elements of society that they might not otherwise confront through sports, Boykov said. Sports can be an important entry point for people to have conversations about politics that they'd otherwise never have. But why? Why would sports be linked to politics? It doesn't make any sense. You're going to have to show me how those two things correlate to each other and match up because they don't. So, anyway, you have all of these people wanting to be activists, and disrespect the country. Yeah, they want to represent the country and make that money and win that gold medal, but they are not proud of the country they're representing, which means they shouldn't be allowed to do so. Go to another country, represent them. So, since you have all these people that, say that the country's racist and the flag is racist and blah, 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 the U.S. Olympic Committee is considering changing the American flag on its Paris 2024 logo. So, this is from the Daily Mail. And let me get rid of this. It says the United States Olympic Committee is considering redesigning the American flag. The redesign would replace an existing logo which has the full 13 red and white stripes, but just 13 stars. The logo would also change the layout of the stripes on the flag. The changes, if brought in, would come into effect for the Paris 2024 Olympics. It would not be changed for the Tokyo Olympics this year or the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing. But Fox News host Sean Hannity, who first reported on the changes, slammed it as an awful idea. The redesign comes amid controversy over activist athletes like hammer thrower Gwen Berry turning their backs on the flag at sporting events. So if you're not watching on YouTube, the new logo, it has 5 red stripes, 4 white stripes, and 5 stars. So I don't know what it represents. That's my only issue. And then if the changes were brought in, like it said, it would be in effect at 2024 Olympics. And there was someone who tweeted out, note to the U.S. Olympic Committee, if you're considering redesigning your American flag, I have a great design you can use, which is the full flag, all 50 stars. Hey, U.S. Olympic Committee, hands off our beautiful American flag. And, looking at this picture, if you're listening on audio, you can't see these, but looking at this picture, I always wondered, what the heck was she doing with her lips? What is the black bar down the middle for? Because it looks ridiculous. That's all I'm saying. Okay. So the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee first addressed the potential changes when they asked Olympians and Paralympian associations on July 6th to fill out an online survey. But why? What would prompt them to do so? One of the items in the survey was a proposed change to the stars and stripes that will be used in USOPC materials. Kate Hartman, a spokesperson for USOC, said the committee is only in the early design stages and is brainstorming a variety of concepts with the stakeholders. We are in the very early stages of potentially exploring new brand executions for the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. It is common practice in creative development to share a variety of concepts with stakeholders to elicit a reaction and feedback that will then be used to determine next steps. The committee said the logo with the flag change is just one of dozens shared throughout the brainstorming and surveying process. Hannity was quick to slam the potential redesign, saying during his Monday night monologue, "We already have our flag. Here is my message. Stop wasting your team's time and money with the redesign of the American flag. It's an awful idea. Our stars and stripes should be the only flag representing our country at the Olympics and the Paralympics. There are so many amazing athletes and champions we are all so proud of." So, Drew Lee tweeted out, so the U.S. Olympic Committee wants to change their logo by having a redesigned U.S. flag with 5 stars, representing various woke ideals, claiming 50 stars is too many for a small pin. Is this too small? I'm done with U.S. Olympics. Let's see who else we have. Personal Responsibility said, if the U.S. Olympic Committee proceeds to change the flag, I will not watch a single minute of competition. West said the U.S. Olympics Committee, by trying to change the look of the U.S. flag, is telling the world we do not support nor stand by our national flag. And Lisa tweeted, the U.S. Olympic Committee wants to redesign our American flag into only 5 stars and 6 stripes. What a disgrace. Hashtag boycott. So the reaction on Twitter was swift, with a number of people agreeing the flag should appear differently on the logo. Debate about the meaning of the U.S. flag has made headlines of late following hammer thrower Gwen Berry's protest during the Olympic trials in Oregon last month. Berry turned her back earlier this month when the national anthem was being played after her Olympic qualifier. Toward the end of the anthem, Berry picked up a black t-shirt with the words "activist athlete" emblazoned on the front and draped it over her head. She later defended her protest, saying she was tricked into being there at that moment and was enraged and confused, insisting the anthem did not represent her, but that she still loves the United States. What do you mean she was tricked? She went there to qualify for the Olympics by her own choice. She was tricked? Okay. Okay. On Twitter, she said, I never said I hated this country. People try to put words in my mouth, but they can't. That's why I speak out. I love my people. Okay, no one ever said that you said you hated the country. Your actions display that you hate the country. You don't have to say the words. These comments really show that one, people in American rally patriotism over basic morality. Two, even after the murder of George Floyd and so many others, the commercials, statements, and phony sentiments regarding Black lives were just a hoax. Barry has also previously said the national anthem does not speak for me. So, redesign U.S. flag, 5 stars, misaligned stripes, what does that mean? Has the 3 red lines together, has something to do with communism and China. 3 red banners for socialism. Unfortunately, this is the start of them trying to officially turn the U.S. into a communist nation. Once that flag changes on official things, the U.S. will officially be dead. Between the flag, the national anthem changing to some woke crap, the Capitol Police literally changing before our very eyes into the Gestapo, we are probably one major event away from the transformation. Little Uncle Intel here, but they are planning on declaring the Republican Party a terrorist organization. They've kind of already done that indirectly, so the country can transition to a one party state. They probably want to death jab more people and confiscate guns before that, but the more we push back, the more sloppy they get and might do it before they disarm people. Says it is also the Biden logo. Oh, it sure stinking is. Let's go back up. Pretty stinking close to the E in Biden. Also, if you think about it, 5 stars. Biden has 5 letters. I mean, I'm just going a little conspiracy theory here. Okay, so audio listeners, go look up images of the Biden logo and look at the E on it where it's the red and white stripes. And then go look at the new idea for the redesigned flag and tell me if that doesn't look like it's trying to say Biden because it matches the E and those stripes match, and then 5 stars for the 5 letters in Biden's name. That's my new conspiracy theory. There you go. Okay, I'm gonna end that here. I hope y'all have a good rest of your day. Please join me on my Facebook, Lauren Collins. I just gotta say something. You can email me, gotta say something 21 at gmail.com. Join my subreddit r/ just gotta say something. And if you're listening on audio, please, subscribe to the podcast, leave me a review, and all of that good jazz. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like the video, share the video, subscribe to my channel, and you can also leave me comments. I will answer the comments that are left. And I hope y'all have a good rest of your day. God bless.